Hi everyone, my name's Zara. I'm going to sit down because, vibes. I am going to talk to you for a few minutes about who I am, why I'm here, what I'm about, and then we're going to talk. Because in line with deconstructing power, power shouldn't be situated just with me because I hold a mic, right? So hi, my name is Zara. My pronouns are she and her. I'm from Manchester. I'm an auntie, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm an organiser, I'm a community member, I'm a youth worker, I've got a social policy degree, I'm care experienced, I am not English, I'm Mancunian, I'm Tongan, I'm Indigenous. I've got all these labels, but hi, I'm Zara. And I come into this space because I enter this space as an abolitionist. Now, abolition is nothing new, but it has become more kind of mainstream. Abolition believes in dismantling power, racism, structures of harm and violence, and building something new. And a lot of people are really scared of abolition because it means to create an absence of something. Now, the abolition that I am obsessed with is the potential of something new. So alongside working for Kids of Colour is an anti-racist youth work organisation. We were founded by my best friend, Roxy Lagan, a few years ago, as she recognised that young people of colour were missing a space for them to be young people of colour in England within youth service. And we sit outside of the youth service, we're a CIC, we self-govern, we choose where we get our money from. We're a very small team, so we have a privilege to do that. And we don't situate ourselves in kind of the traditional youth work structure because we also, while we create spaces for young people, we do a lot of advocacy work around racism that young people experience, whether that's in education, whether it's in policing, the criminal justice system. And our advocacy work leads us into campaign work, specifically around racism, like joint enterprise and gangs policing, surveillance of racialised communities, all that kind of stuff. And it's hard work and tiresome work, but it's the organisation I needed when I was a kid. It is a privilege to work there, it's a gift. It's inspiring. The team that I'm surrounded by is amazing. One thing that I'm going to mention, as I talk about Kids of Colour, is our care policy. We have a staff care policy, and it opens with, we dream of the day where we no longer need to work. We inherently believe in kind of recognising capitalism and working for money as being part of the problem and the violence and the harm that we face, right? And that speaks to classism, it speaks to kind of structures of tiered working systems and education and all that kind of stuff. And we have a care policy that is framed around you. Every organisation I know is like, bring your true self to work. What does that even mean when you are operating in hostile working environments? Whereas at work, I can come in and be like, I'm not feeling it today, guys. I've literally sat on my phone last night watching violence happen in Palestine. I'm tired and exhausted. And the team will be like, should we go for a walk and get a brew? While we're busy, we make space for how we exist as human beings in our work. And I think that that's something, in the movement of EDI and all of this kind of stuff, we de-center the human and bring in the policy, and we focus on that instead, but we really try to focus on the person. And then alongside that, I talked about it before, I voluntarily run a community centre, the only grassroots community centre left in Harper Bay, where an odd bunch of people, we provide free food 3 days a week, we do wellbeing activities, we provide warm spaces, there's a food bank based in there, we do debt advice, but it's like community. So it's like grimy, DIY, like people swear and shout and scream, and we're like, yo, come sit down, we don't exclude unless you're the feds. It's like really interesting work, and the one thing, we don't believe in conditionality, we just believe in people. And it's really interesting existing in these spaces while fighting racism, right? And doing that. And I am a community organiser. And it's only since BLM 2020 that I really got involved with organising with demonstrations and that kind of stuff, because previously my organising had always been in community relationships, like bringing people together. And that's the foundation of what I want to do today, is recognising that as a group of people we hold power, and I feel most powerful when I'm with people. I don't feel most powerful when I'm stood in front of 6,000 people with a microphone in my hands, shouting, you know, whatever, and chanting, and it's interesting because a lot of people do draw power from that, but I feel most powerful when I am being challenged. I think the moment you exist in an echo chamber, you've lost. And so what I wanted to do was kind of us assert our power into this space and think about dreaming. So when we talk about removing systems of harm, what does that mean? Does that mean that we fight to get rid of something that causes us harm, and then there's nothing left to replace it, and then we have to get to building, and then again we're harming ourselves because there isn't something to catch us? Or does it mean that we can dismantle a system by making it so that people don't need to engage with them? So like, for instance, an example that I'm going to use is policing. It's huge. We've got the GMP headquarters is a 10-minute walk away from where our community centre is. So they're really quick to respond to call-outs from the community. We are a community that is full of young people who love motorbikes. A lot of them own them. None of them are road legal, none of them are old enough to drive. But it's something that brings them joy. They love a dirt bike, they love wheelies, they love going fast. And for the most part, they're using some amazing skills to fix them, maintain them, they're using helmets. But there's an element of like risk and safety and danger that plays a part in the joy that it brings them. But it's also a nuisance. Their joy is a nuisance to mums with kids, to animals, to babies and people trying to sleep. And there is a woman who lives with her daughter who, whenever the boys were coming out on their bikes, the bikes were keeping the kids awake. And this mum and this grandmother was ringing the police all the time. The police would roll up in their police car, the kids would go off on their bikes, the police car would go, the kids would come back. But it led to more surveillance and criminalisation, bikes being taken away from people, money being spent on new bikes, because these kids weren't going to live without their joy. But also this disconnect between this family and these kids on the estate where they saw each other as enemies, right? She was having her kids kept up by these bikes, and these boys on bikes were being criminalised by this woman and was bringing harm onto the estate. Anyway, she came in for stay and play. We run a stay and play session, old school. I grew up in stay and play. My mum used to run them in our community centre. And she brought her granddaughter. She then started coming to our cafes, like we're chilling. And she came in and she was like, I'm sick of these boys in the estate. Rang the police don't do nothing, da 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 da. I said, are they out on the estate now? She said, yeah. I said, give us 10 minutes. I got up, I put my coat on, I walked onto the estate. I said, hiya lads, you all right? Do you know that you're keeping a baby awake on your motorbikes? Do you know it's not very nice? This mum, she needs to work, the babies need to sleep. How are we going to solve this problem? Because she keeps ringing the police and you don't like that. What's the solution to this? They went, not rounded our bikes outside of her house. I said, so what are we going to do? We're going to go onto the Vale. Off they popped. They turn their bikes off when they walk past the house, when they take them back to theirs. We can remove the power of harm and violence through dialogue and community relationships, right? The boys still get to experience their joy, mum still and child and baby still get to go to sleep, the police aren't called onto the estate. It's a win for everyone. And so what I want to do today is recognise that we're talking about solutions, like the question that was asked by the gentleman who was sat on that table is something that really resonates with me. Like, we're talking about harms and violence all the time, but how are we thinking about solutions? How are we dreaming outside of the norms? And when I think about abolition, I think about liberation. I think about the giants that we have come before us, and that determining word of liberation. Now, liberation looks different for me as it does for you, as it does for you, and that's okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about dreaming, liberation, healing, love, connection, and we're going to do that together, because I can't I don't have any answers. I just have my perspective, my experiences, my resources. But you might have other resources that would complement what I go without. And it's about forming those connections in the room. And one thing that's come up today as well is like trauma and violence and harm. We don't heal ourselves through carceral systems, right? We hear that with prevent, there's a problem, all right, well, let's bring in punitive measures. It's not worked. Ilyas's book, I mean, I'm sad to run my workshop at the same time as the other two parallel workshops because they're going to be fire. But what we're talking about all the time is different types of issues that exist in our communities, but solutions lie with the people that experience the issues that we're talking about. So, one of the things that exists, whether it's in anti-racism work, whether it's in anti-fascism work, whether it's in NGOs, whether it's in the third sector, whether it's in the local authority, is community. What does community mean? Who are we talking about? What community am I a part of? Within one geographical area, how many communities have we got there? How are we connecting with them? And so the first thing that I want us to do in our tables, and I'm going to come and listen, I'm not going to join in, I'm not going to do no talking. This is a workshop that we collectively own, because when we talk about this deconstructing power, it's recognising that we all have expertise that we can bring in, right? And currently we have an elected body of people who aren't representing our interests. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. So if we want to remove power from them, we need to bring the power into where it exists. Or we have to acknowledge the power where it exists, which is with people. So we've got some flip charts. What time are we on? And we're finishing up. Cool. Oh, buzzing. Right on time. Thank you. So on our tables, like this is a broad framing question, and your conversation can go wherever it goes. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no one specific thing that we want to get out of this. But what does community mean? Or what is community? And how are we talking about community? And that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm going to turn my mic off. But let's talk about it. Let's get into conversation. Let's get to know the people on your table. If you've come to this conference today and you don't connect with somebody new, how sad of an opportunity was that? Yeah? So let's get to chatting. I'm going to bring us back together for a second. And because of time, I'm not asking for feedback. Although, like, if there's time in the break and you want to talk to each other about what's come up, feedback to each other. But this is very much about you and your table. And now I'm going to introduce dreaming. So I think of dreaming in the wish about things in the very childish. If I had a magic wand, what would I make happen? If it was you remember Argos catalogues? Is people here? Yeah, there's definitely people here that remember the Argos catalogues. I used to get the Argos catalogue when you go into town with your mum on a Saturday. You take it home and you'd be circling all this stuff. And you knew that you weren't going to get all this stuff, but the dream was there, right? And when it comes to liberation, when it comes to anti-racism, when it comes to deconstructing power, we have to be childlike in our dreaming. We have to recognise that this idea that we've been conditioned into existing within power structures is oppressive, and that liberation will look completely different to how we exist in society now, right? And I like to see it as humanity is the starting point and anything being the end point, right? And so I want, and dreaming, I mean, I really, really struggled with dreaming in the beginning, but it's like a muscle that needs training. And it's a skill that you develop. And my dream looks different dependent on the day, dependent on the weather, right? Dependent on how I've slept, dependent on what space I'm in, dependent on whether I'm working, whether I'm chilling. Dreaming is, and it's never ending, and it can take different forms. And in a real dream, I could be in this room and walk through that door and we can see the chairs there, but in a dream, it could be grass. Do you get what I mean? And the beauty of the subconscious is that nobody is telling me what's right or wrong. And so what I want to do is talk about dreaming. So when we connect dreaming to community, because there was a lot of focus on kind of shared values and we've got this in common or we identify with each other, But within community is violence and hierarchy and harm and people upholding oppression and us checking and be, like you said, jealousy and envy. Like, all of those things also exist in community. And when we come together, like the conversation about the far right and fascism, we have to be ready to hold that and not shy away from it, not go, oh, let's have a community cohesion day where we all eat different food from all around the world. That isn't cohesion, it's a photo op, right? So when we dream, what does dreaming mean? If you think about dreaming and liberation, I'd hope we'd have time for 3 questions, but we've got time for 2. Because these are deep questions and there's a lot of us on the table. So when it comes to dreaming about liberation, what does that feel like? And this doesn't, you don't have to write this down, just have a conversation because there's power in dialogue. If we might think about something new from a different perspective from today, then we've won. Yeah? So what, dreaming and liberation, how do those things link together? Why is it important to dream when we deconstruct power? Why is dreaming important? That's the question. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. I'm sitting back down because I feel weird standing over everyone. We have done like stuff that I spend weeks and weeks and weeks dreaming and thinking and talking to people without reason, right? So I will engage in conversation with people about something, not because I've got a target to reach, and not because I want to reach an outcome, but because I think that we build solidarity through connection, understanding, challenge, empathy, dreaming. And that's the thing that I really want us to take away, right? When we exist in power structures, we are taught that you have got to do a certain thing or work in a certain way or be in relationship and contact with certain people to achieve a certain means. And I really want us to reject that. And I know that we still will have to, as we leave this room, go back to our normal lives and still have to do some of that, but we can bring in this critical thinking around, do we have to do it exactly like that every time? And the dreaming, and this is like something that I really has resonated with me throughout the past year with what's going on in Palestine. Palestinians have never stopped dreaming of liberation. No matter how many bombs have dropped, no matter how many soldiers, no matter how many people have died and been murdered or starved, like, they still dream or in pursuit of liberation. And if you can do that under such dire conditions, such oppressive and violent conditions, then we owe it to them, when we exist here in the belly of the beast, to dream beyond our confines, right? And so in the last 4 minutes, because we will finish on time, has anybody got anything that they want to say about dreaming, solidarity, or like a question they want to ask somebody? And please don't direct your questions at me, because I don't sit here holding answers. But is there anything in the last couple of minutes that we just want to say out loud to the room? Mimi?
We were talking about positive legal science abolitionists to see what really exists. And today's reality was, all the time was a drink. It used to be a drink.
Yeah, thank you.
Saying for some of the points mentioned that people can dismantle nepotism, which helps them to empower control by connections with who you know, in order to allocate privilege for to progress of people. It can also help to rebuild self-esteem amongst the people, to redirect subconscious thinking of negative stereotypes and changing the status quo as well. And it's a different paradigm of hope that can produce an exit strategy out of adversity and hardship.
Hope, dreaming, thinking.
We were talking about actually dreaming, about having the time to dream regularly, to pause and think and reflect, and actually, I think sort of reflect on the fact that our systems are designed to almost not allow us to think, and then inadvertently blame ourselves for not having time to think as well. So it's quite interesting when you step back and think, why are we driven?
I love that. Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything, leave something in the room?
If I'm going to come back just in case you do want to. When we leave this room today, like this, I think is really important, time. And dreaming doesn't need to exist hugely. And I heard somebody say it's easier to dream together than it is alone. And of course it is, because we've been taught individualism, because in collective is power. And we've been taught that dreaming is unachievable, untenable, childlike. It's, you know, it can't be measured. How are we going to get there? And that is a tool of oppression. Its power in itself is that you have been conditioned, we have been conditioned to believe that the impossible is possible. And I know that I sound like really kind of airy-fairy with what I'm saying, and I'm on this journey, right, of like dreaming, and sometimes I'm like, dreaming isn't for me, because how are we ever going to get there? But it comes back to that question of solution. We have tried most things within the structures that exist, and the issues that my dad faced when he came and fled war all those years ago. My dad's 72 now. He was 4 when he fled war, occupation. There's still the issues that he was facing, the problem, the violence, the oppression, the racism still exists now. So it is time for us to dream beyond what we know. And that's how and from that comes small solutions. And I also think that we have to reject this capitalist idea of success. We do not always have to succeed. We don't always have to achieve a target. We are okay. Failure isn't necessary. Like, this idea of failure isn't something that we have to hold on to, that we have to attach to worth. It's okay to try things and it not be the right thing. It's okay to let go. We don't have to keep trying the same thing again and again. We can invent new things. And that might be bringing back old things. Like we talked on this table about old indigenous practices that have been eradicated through white supremacy. That connection to the world, right? And we talk a lot about climate justice and how we're killing the planet. What if the planet just wants us gone? Is the earth alive? Is it rejecting us? Do you know what I mean? And just dream to think differently. Dream to want more. Dream to try. Dream to not succeed. Dream to meet new people. Dream to rest. Dream to make time. That's all I want to say. Dream.